All right, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol, and it has been a bit of a break. 3 weeks, maybe, something like that. Been off, had a sheep hunt, did not kill a sheep, had a pretty crazy adventure. Thank you for your patience. If you hear a slight hum in the background today, there's a fan. It is hot as blazes in Winnipeg today, and I'm not willing to shut my fan off and sit here and sweat my bag off. So we're just going to have to live with it. Now, the purpose of today's podcast is to do an overall gear breakdown of how everything went on the sheep hunt. There's a couple of pieces that I'm not going to dig deeply into simply because I'm going to do a standalone piece on those. For example, the XO K3 6400 and the Summit Telos TR2. I will give a brief overview of how they performed, but I'm not going to go deep. Also, I got an unbelievable number of questions when I put that I was doing this podcast up on my Instagram. So depending on how long it takes me to get through this podcast, I may do the questions as a second podcast or do them independently up on my IG or something. I don't want this thing to go on for 2 hours. I just don't have that much time today. But I got an hour, so we're going to squeeze as much as we can in an hour. Also, I'm not going to get into the hunt details per se because I'm going to do a second podcast next week where I tell the whole story of the hunt. And I'm also releasing my sheep hunt video next week. So I don't really want to give away everything that happened, and there was some pretty, major ups and downs. We'll just leave it at that. But I will share details as far as they are pertinent to the gear that we're going to go over today. One more bit of housekeeping. So I had made a mention that I was doing a 6-month radical transformation project where you could work with me one-on-one in a coaching capacity, and I would work with your diet, your supplementation, and your training program. And we would work towards whatever goal it was that you wanted to work towards. And this would be a combination of one-on-one coaching, weekly updates via pictures and plans, and then monthly calls where the whole group would get together on Zoom. And we would also have an ongoing group text. So there was a community involvement component. So 5 or 6 dudes reached out. I've got back to everybody and let them know that I did hear from them. Then I was gone for hunting for 2 weeks. I'm going to get back to, if you're waiting for a message from me, it's coming this week. I want to give people one last opportunity to get in touch. So if that's something that interests you, it's going to be $250 a month for 6 months, $1,500 flat rate, covers all the training, all the nutrition, the coaching, the weekly check-ins, access to me via text, access to the group text, the monthly Zoom calls, the whole 9 yards. One flat rate, pay it up front, go for 6 months, kick some ass. So if that interests you and you want to work together, shoot me an email, jay@mindfulhunter.com. If you've already shot me an email, expect to hear back from me in the next couple days. Okay, so let's hook into it. And I've just got my gear spreadsheet pulled up here on the computer, and I'm just going to walk through it. And we'll talk about each piece of gear as we get to it. Okay, so up first is the backpack, the XO K3 6400. Like I said, I'm not going to go into great depth here, but I will say the pack performed phenomenally well. I have no complaints about the pack. I have a couple little pieces of feedback. I'm going to have a chat with Mark later today, actually, from XO, and just give him some of the things that I thought were interesting. I'll get into those on the other review, but it handled weight extraordinarily well. Nothing broke. There wasn't any major flaws that I could see. So my initial review and opinion on the XO K3 holds firm. I think it is, except for maybe one other pack, I think it's the best pack on the market, especially when you consider the value. It's priced significantly lower than, I think there's couple other packs that are equal in quality, but they're also significantly more expensive. So if you're looking at the combination of quality and value, I think the XO wins out. Obviously, personal preferences aside, there's other good packs. It's not the only one, but I think it's a great decision. Okay, up next, the Summit Telos. So the bad news here is this thing leaked like a sieve. The very first night, I was in a torrential downpour. I woke up half an hour after I was going to bed, and there was basically just water coming down straight through the fly. It was just raining loosely in the tent. So as it currently stands, I do not recommend purchasing that tent, but there's a caveat there. I've been in contact with Summit, and basically they have a special machine at their office that can test like the water resistance of fabrics. And so what we're doing is they're in the process of sending me the FedEx info, and we're going to ship the fly down to Colorado. They're going to test it and then get back to me with their results. I'm kind of interested to see how this goes, because part of me is a little bit concerned, like the laboratory is not the real world. And what if they come back and say, no, I don't know, our machine says it's fine, we think you're out to lunch. But I literally sent them video footage of the thing raining down. And he said that there's, under certain circumstances, if you pitch the fly too tight, the roof won't be convex and the condensation will drip down on you instead of rolling down the peak. And I was kind of like, that sounds kind of bullshitty to me. If it's that fragile, like if pitching the fly too tight can create like just a, torrential downpour inside the tent, that is kind of, then that too is a flaw I'm not willing to live with. So either way, it's definitely a black mark as far as I'm concerned, but the story's not done yet, because there are manufacturing inconsistencies, and they might come back and say, holy crap, man, you're right. I don't know what happened, but this particular piece of fabric is definitely not as water resistant as it's supposed to. Sorry for the mix up. Here's a new one, and then we could be good to go. And I'll get into it later on, but what I ended up using, I had a 7-foot by 9-foot Dyneema Tarp from Z-Packs that after that first night, I would pitch above the tent, and I really fell in love with that setup because it was much more versatile. It allowed me to keep the doors open to the tent at night, even when it was raining and rain wouldn't get in. And then if it was raining in the morning and I had to pack up, I could literally pack up all my gear, the tent, everything underneath the tarp, keep it all dry. And then the last thing I would do is just drop the tarp, roll it up, strap it to the outside of my pack, and I was on my way. So that was a really good solution for not that great of an additional weight penalty. I think that tarp with cord is only 5 ounces. So it ended up being a kind of good situation, funnily enough. Sleeping pad, big Agnes Q-Core SLX wide long, coming in at 24 ounces. I love this pad. This is my second full year with this pad, maybe 5th or 6th hunt on this pad. It's perfect. I think there's a couple other pads that are equally as good, but I think the new generation of sleeping pads, the pads that are at least 3 3/4 to 4 1/4 inches thick, they tend to have slightly elevated bumpers on the side. So the 2 baffles on the side will be a little bit bigger, which helps keep you from rolling off the sides of the pads. They're insulated. They've got an R value of anywhere from 3 to 5. And they're a little more luxurious. Like for a long time, the NeoAir X-Lite was the be all and end all. And to be honest, I sleep like shit on that thing. Yeah, okay, it weighs 12 ounces, but it's like a 1/2 inch thick, and I'm a side sleeper. And it's not enough. So sleeping pads are one of those areas where I think it is well worth carrying some extra weight, because I truly believe the quality of your sleep impacts the quality of your hunt in a very profound way. Up next, Enlightened Equipment Enigma Quilt. I took my down quilt. I have the exact same quilt actually in synthetic that I'm going to be using for my goat hunt this winter. But I took the down one. This is another piece that I've had 3 or 4 years now. It weighs 22 ounces. It's good to -6 or 7 degrees Celsius. And it's just fantastic. If you've never run a quilt, you don't know what you're missing out on. I much prefer them over sleeping bags for a variety of reasons. I find them more versatile, lighter, warmer when they're run properly. And in my opinion, anybody who says quilts aren't warm enough for me, you haven't taken the time to attach it to your sleeping pad properly. There's normally 3 straps or 3 connection points along the back. One goes all the way around your sleeping pad down at the bottom, keeps you strapped in. The second is a little stretchy cord that goes behind your back and keeps it snugged in under your shoulders. And then on really tight, cold nights, there's a third connection point, like a little clip behind your neck. And when those 3 are closed, you're like snug as a bug in a rug. It's the best. And in my opinion, it's the lightest, warmest, best option. I think the fact that it's down is a little bit of a vulnerability. And when it started raining in through the top of the tent, you immediately start to get concerned because you're like, shit, if this down bag gets wet, I'm in trouble. But I've never had a tent leak like that tent did, so it's never been an issue for me before. And like even in my NEAC, I would get some condensation inside, but it was never enough that I was worried about it compromising the down. Now for pillows, I did something incredibly interesting this year that was a total game changer for me, and I'm going to be posting a video about this as soon as I get my feet back underneath me. I'm still feeling a little bit disoriented from coming back from 2 weeks in the mountains by myself to the real world. I basically took Velcro straps with adhesive backs and I strapped 2 pillows together and then put Velcro straps on my sleeping pad. Because a couple things happen. Okay, what's the problem with backcountry pillows? One, they're pretty flat. And I'm a side sleeper. So when I turn on my side, I need my head to be pretty elevated because I've got broad shoulders. And if my head falls down too far, it's incredibly uncomfortable. And I get terrible night sleeps in the backcountry, which is just what I've come to expect the norm to be. And number 2, if you can't put them inside your sleeping bag, like most sleeping bags have like a little nook in the hood and you can kind of stuff a backcountry pillow in there and it'll stay put. My Kafaru slick bag is perfect for that. But when you're using a quilt, because the quilt is slippery and maybe you're wearing a beanie and it's slippery and the sleeping pad is slippery, the pad will shoot kind of, you'll like compress it and it pops out all the time. So you're constantly like trying to get the pillow to stay underneath your head. So I put these Velcro straps or like Velcro strips right on my sleeping pad. Like I glued them to the sleeping pad with the adhesive backs and then put Velcro strips on the pillows as well. Put the 2 pillows together, then attached the pillows to the sleeping pad. And I basically had a double height pillow that was mechanically adhered to the sleeping pad. And I had, without a doubt, the best sleeps of my life in the backcountry. Unreal, man. Fell asleep quickly, stayed asleep. Now, you still get kind of sore hips from being a side sleeper and sleeping on a sleeping pad. So like maybe every hour to hour and a half, you kind of wake up, roll over and go back to sleep. You're never going to get away from that. But I slept like a champ. And that was a huge game changer for me, attaching those pillows like that and taking that crick out of my neck. Just phenomenal. Okay. let's get up to the clothing. And I'm going to start with the clothing that I wore on a daily basis. I ended up having far too much clothing, but the problem with a sheep hunt in August is that you could literally have a 30°C day, or you could have a minus 15°C day with snow. So you really do have to take a broad spectrum of gear. So what I wore on an everyday basis was the Sitka Core lightweight hoodie, Lululemon boxers. They're the Air Mesh something or other, the 7-inch long ones. Sitka Ascent pant, a Sitka Ball Cap, darn tough socks. I wore an Arcade Stretchy belt. There's a couple other pieces, but I'll leave those alone for now. Okay, the Core lightweight hoodie. This is my favorite base layer for sure. I was a merino guy for a long time. If you are still a merino guy, I recommend you at least experiment running synthetic base layers. The speed with which they dry is going to blow your mind. I know the argument is merino doesn't hold stench and merino will keep you warm longer, but all the merino base layers I've always had also retain moisture and stay wet for an unbelievable amount of time. So it's like, okay, they keep me marginally warmer while I'm wet, but they stay wet for so long, I'm always wet. So it's kind of like, is that really a benefit? When maybe I could be like a little bit colder for a few minutes, but then the material is going to dry out and go back to operating the way it's supposed to. Like I was walking through pissing rain for the first three or 4 days constantly. Sun would come out. I would take a snack break. 15 minutes after I had my backpack off my back and I was in a slight breeze with just a bit of warm air, my lightweight hoodie would be bone dry again. So super great, versatile piece of gear. My only issue is I wish there was a little bit more stretch throughout the forearm, well, really the whole arm area. Maybe I just have big forearms, but it's quite tight on my forearms and through my biceps, and there's almost no stretch. So I can't pull the sleeves up at all, which is not that big a deal. But even if they had just a strip of stretchy material running up the side, like if because of the nature of the synthetic material they're using, they can't add like a little bit of Lycra or a little bit of spandex to it and get it to be natively a bit more elastic, they could add in like a little stretchy panel, like a 2-inch strip all the way up that would kind of like they do in the crotch of pants. They'll put that different material down there so you get more stretch. That's my only critique on the lightweight hoodie. Boxers were perfect, and I was thinking, I'm pretty sure I've been running these boxers for almost 2 years now. I bought 4 boxers at the same time, 4 pairs, and I've been running them all for almost 2 years, at least 6 or 7 different hunts. And just now I noticed a hole in the crotch of one of them. So not only do I think they're the best fitting, best breathing, most comfortable, least likely to ride up boxer, I can also comment now directly on their durability, and I think it's incredibly high for the quality of the fabric. Like for the comfort level of that fabric, they're the longest lasting boxers I've ever had. So I'm about to buy a new round of those. Sitka Ascent pant. This was my first hunt in these pants, and they are officially my go-to hunt pant from now on. I was blown away. I could not be happier. Much like the merino versus synthetic conversation, when you're having a conversation about hunting pants, one of the compromises you need to make is, do you want something that's going to be like a little heavier, a little more durable, and a little more water resistant that will also take longer to dry? Or do you want something that's a little bit lighter, breathes a little bit more, and might get wet quicker, but will dry quicker? The Sitka Ascent pant falls into this category. I took the Sitka Mountain pant on my sheep hunt last year, and I would say the circumstances of the two hunts, like weather-wise and hiking-wise, were basically identical. Brutal hikes almost every day, a couple of sitting chill days sprinkled out. probably more rain this year, but hiking through rain and then getting blasted by hot sun. And the Sitka Ascent pant was by far the preferable pant over the mountain pant. The mountain pant are a good late season pant, I think, but they're too heavy for these early season hunts where once they get wet, they kind of start dragging. And anyways, really impressed with the Sitka Ascent pant. And I might do a full review just on those pants because I also think if you're bringing a pair of long johns with you, this is an all-in-one solution. Like if you can only buy one pair of hunting pants, I really strongly recommend these Ascent pants. And then as you get in the later season, you just wear a base layer, like a pair of long johns underneath it. And that's going to give you an additional 10 to 15 degrees, no problem. I'm going to wear these same pants during my late September elk hunt with my old man and my brother, 100%. Also incredibly durable. They're a very lightweight material, but I was super aggressive on this hunt. Like I was hiking through thick brush every day, lots of like huckleberry brushes and lots of like really woody, brushy material, willows, aspen, lots of things that were grabbing at you and are kind of prone to ripping things and tearing things. And there's not one single issue with the pants whatsoever. Sitka Ball Cap. The fit of this thing can be kind of annoying just because the little piece of elastic around the top kind of slides down your forehead. It always makes you feel like you've got hair coming out of your cap. But it dries really quickly. It keeps the sun out of my eyes, and it's kind of the best solution I've found so far, so I use it. Darn Tough overcalf socks. I've been wearing these for years. I'm going to say something about Darn Tough here. It's a good thing they have a lifetime warranty because basically after about 2 years of use, almost every single pair of Darn Tough socks I have has gotten holes in them. Now, the nice thing is they have an address here in Vancouver where you literally put the socks in an envelope, and if you fold the socks in half, you can fit them in a regular, just letter envelope and stick a normal stamp on there, and you ship them back and they ship you new socks. But, I'm finding myself at the end of every season returning a couple pairs of socks because they got holes. But the two pair I took this year were brand new, so there was no problem. And then the Arcade Stretchy belt, I still think this is a sleeper hit for hunters. If you're wearing a nylon webbing belt, you need to give your head a shake because your body weight changes so much throughout the day because of hydration and other things. If you're wearing a static belt, I just don't see how your pants are staying up all day. And it also, I think your hips probably get more sore than they need to. And this stretchy belt is just perfect. It's made by a company called Arcade. You can find it on Amazon or at any hiking store, MEC, Valhalla Pure, REI. No, it's great. For boots, I wore my last Sportiva Nepal GTX. Now, these are a very hardcore boot. Like until you get up to like a hard shell boot for ice climbing, this is as beefy a sheet boot as you can possibly buy. And I originally bought them because I needed, now I can't remember the word for them. The little hooks, welts. It has a toe welt and a heel welt. And what that means is you can snap on crampons on the front and the back. So it's got like little nubs on the front and back, and I needed them for a goat hunt. And now I've just been using them for my sheep hunts as well. And they're particularly heavy. And when they do get wet, like if you're crossing creeks and you take in some water over top of your Gators, which does happen on occasion, they take an incredibly long time to dry out. They really do. That's the only drawback. But otherwise, the boots performed flawlessly. I coated the shit out of them in like a waterproofing wax. I actually use Obenhoff's. It's like maybe it's like a beeswax base. It's a leather protectant. It's kind of old school stuff. And then while I was out there, because I had to go to town at one point, which is a story I'll get into at a later date. I tried this new product from Granger's called G-Wax, and I was really impressed with it. I liked it as well. I'm a believer in heavy water protectant on leather boots, and a lot of people will say it makes the Gore-Tex stop working, but I personally think Gore-Tex in boots is horse shit anyways. I think a good pair of gaiters and a shitload of water protectant on your boots is what you need to have, like, legitimately waterproof boots. And you need to do it at the beginning of every hunt, but the boots perform perfectly. I did get a few hot spots on my feet, but this was not the result of the boots. This is the result of the fact that I pushed things really, really far this hunt, and your feet. Here's the thing. We do this backpack cardio, but you're doing it for like an hour and a half at a time. You can't toughen up your feet. You can't get your feet into a place where they can do a 10-hour hike with 80 pounds on your back by doing 1-hour hikes with 40 pounds on your back. So I've come to the place now where you just got to accept the fact that your feet are going to get a little bit beat up. But it was nothing that a little leuco tape and moleskin didn't fix, and I was never at a point where I had to stop early because of foot pain. In fact, most of the hot spots weren't even painful at all. It would be at night, I would take my socks off and be like, oh, I rubbed a little skin away there. And I was very proactive, and that's something else I've learned. As soon as I notice any type of physical damage or I feel any type of hot spot, I stop and I put leuco tape on it, because it's so much easier to be proactive with that stuff and stay on top of it and not let it get it out of control. Because once it gets out of control and it's to the point where it's affecting your ability to hike, you're not going to get back ahead of it. Like, you're going to literally need to take a couple days off your feet in order to let things heal. Whereas if you get out in front of it, you can stay on top of it and it won't get to the point where it will negatively impact your ability to cover ground. Now, I'm going to do things a little bit out of order here. I got more clothes to run through, but I don't want to lose my place. So I'm going to cover my trekking poles. I use the Black Diamond Trail Ergo Corks. Again, I've had these things in one version or another for over 5 years. And the first iteration of these had a plastic locking mechanism that I broke a couple of times, and they ended up being replaced by Black Diamond. And then finally they just sent me the new version of the trekking pole that had a metal locking mechanism, and I've had zero issues with them since then. And I've really put these things through the paces, both in winter goat hunt and in sheep hunts and elk hunts. Can't speak highly enough of these. So Black Diamond Trail Ergo Corks. I'm a big guy. I put a lot of weight on these things. I've fallen on them on angles and twisted them and torqued them and had them get caught in roots and pushed them, and they don't break. And they're like a hybrid carbon aluminum. I think the bottom two sections are carbon and then the top section is aluminum. I'd have to go look. Highly recommend it. Now for Gators, I was running a kind of early version of the Ape Equipment Gators. This is a local guy in BC. He hit me up. He wanted to run my Gators. He uses a pretty innovative material for the boot straps that go underneath your instep. I'm going to have to get in touch with him and figure out exactly what it is. It's kind of similar to the Dyneema rope type stuff that Stone Glacier is using, but it's a little bit different. But it's the same along that line. It's like a fibrous braided rope. They held up extraordinarily well. There are a few fit and finish things that bothered me that I'm not going to get into here because they are an early version. And we've been in conversation, and I sent him a bunch of pictures, and he's very eager to get my feedback, and he was super open to constructive feedback. And I'm shipping the Gators back to him. He's going to make me a 2.0 version and send them back for me to use on my elk hunt. So it would be a bit half-cocked for me to start talking about the things that I didn't like or didn't work well, because those probably aren't going to be features, or there'll be issues that will be fixed on future versions. So stay tuned for that, because I wouldn't recommend buying that piece of gear right now, but maybe in another couple months when he's got a few of the bugs worked out, I think that would be a local option for Gators that would be really cool. And he's got a couple of different new fabrics that he's testing out that I'm super excited about. Now for the gear that I packed. Okay. I packed the Sitka Ambient hoodie, the Sitka Kelvin Aerolite jacket, the Sitka Dew Point jacket, Sitka Core lightweight long johns, Sitka Kelvin Light down 3/4 pants, Sitka Dew Point pants, a pair of Sitka Stormfront gloves with liners, one extra pair of boxers, one extra pair of socks, the Sitka Jetstream beanie, and the Beanie sun hat. Out of all of that stuff, I never once wore the Sitka Kelvin Aerolite jacket, the Kelvin Light down puffy pants, or the Beanie hat. So I didn't need to take any puffy layers at all. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I underestimated how warm the Sitka Ambient hoodie was. Typically, in place of that Ambient hoodie, I would have taken the Sitka Core heavyweight hoodie. The Ambient hoodie is much warmer than the Core heavyweight hoodie, but it also breathes much better. So it's a far superior piece. If you are looking to replace a grid fleece layer, buy the Sitka Ambient hoodie. I was very impressed. Now, I didn't get to really run it through at paces because it wasn't cold enough to wear it, to be honest with you. But I wore it almost every morning around camp for an hour or two, and I slept in it a couple of times. And it's an incredibly comfortable, incredibly versatile piece of gear. So that was the other reason why I never had to take my puffy jacket out. Typically in the mornings when I was glassing on previous hunts, even when I put on my grid fleece, I'd still want to put on a puffy jacket just because the grid fleece layer wasn't quite enough. With this Ambient hoodie, especially because you've already got your rain jacket out because the bugs are probably starting to kick off, that Ambient hoodie paired with a rain jacket is pretty toasty. Like, it's going to need to really get chilly before you need to put a puffy jacket. And the other reason I bring puffy layers is sleep. I bring a -6, -7 degrees Celsius bag, but with puffy layers, you can knock that down another 10 or 12 degrees. Again, because the Ambient hoodie is so warm, I don't see the need to ever sleep in my puffy jacket if I've got that Ambient hoodie, because I think the Core lightweight hoodie with the Ambient hoodie and that -7 degree bag, I mean, you could easily get to -15, -20, and you're going to be very cozy inside there. And at that point, if you're expecting temperatures below -20, you're in a deep winter hunt and you're going to have a different bag. I'm going to be bringing my Kafaru slick bag or something like that. And so again, I'm not going to need that additional small puffy layer. So that was a good learning for me. If I was to do the same hunt next year, I won't even bother with the puffy jacket. And then same with the puffy pants. It just never got cold enough. Not even close. But I know people have seen snow on these August hunts before. So it's one of those things where you can probably get away with it, but it's a bit of insurance. And one of the things originally was that I was supposed to have a dry bag and I was going to be hunting all from one lake, and I was going to leave things like this in that dry bag if it turned out halfway through the hunt I didn't need them, because I was going to be doing these 2 to 3 day loops that would keep bringing me back to the lake. But because of a variety of circumstances, I ended up doing the more typical put 12 days worth of gear on your back and just go. So I ended up having to be like, well, am I going to take this stuff or am I not going to take this stuff? And I would rather take something and not use it than not take it and need it, especially when it comes to a critical piece of gear like that. But in light of how versatile the Ambient hoodie is, I think I'm going to be far more likely to leave my puffy jacket at home. The Sitka Core lightweight long johns. This piece is a big, big miss for me. Again, it's the material that they use doesn't have very much stretch to it. And I find that it's so tight on my quads and calves, but the waist is just blown right out. Like they just fall down all the time. Yeah, I find the sizing really, really weird on these, and I might send a message to John and just let him know. I have a feeling it's a piece of gear that's probably not a big priority for them. And I do think they have a pair of zip-offs in the works, which might be why these haven't got enough attention to get a redesign in a significant period of time. But in their current form, I strongly recommend not buying the Sitka Core lightweight long johns. Rain gear, dew point, pant, and jacket. I actually only ever wore the jacket to keep the bugs away. I love the dew point system because it's so light, 14 ounces for the jacket and 12 ounces for the pants. It rained a lot the first 4 days, but I would just walk through it because I knew in an hour it was going to be sunny and hot. And it would just, these waves of rain would come through, followed by these waves of sun. And it's like, I'm not going to put rain gear on and off and on and off. And I said this time and time before, rain gear is not about keeping you dry for the most part. While hiking, rain gear is not about keeping you dry. Rain gear is about keeping you warm. And so if it's warm outside already, I'd rather be more comfortable and wet and let just dry out later than put on rain gear and maybe keep the rain off, but then just sweat out from the inside out. So probably didn't need the Stormfront gloves, but there was 2 mornings I wore them while glassing, and it was quite nice. Again, at 14 ounces, would I leave those at home next time? Yeah, probably. Probably didn't need those. Sitka Jetstream beanie. Now, normally I sleep with this on. That's why I bring it for the most part, to be honest with you, sleeping and glassing. But again, because of the Ambient hoodie, I think if it's getting cold enough where you need a beanie, you can probably just put your hoodie on and then you've got head covering. This is the only drawback of a quilt to a sleeping bag, is that you don't have a hood in the actual quilt. But I really like the Sitka Jetstream beanie. And I like the Beanie hat. But again, this is probably something that I'll just stop taking because I've taken it on a few hunts now. It's because I used to wear it when I was hunting down in Arizona or New Mexico, and you're just getting blasted by the sun all day. That in my mind, when I'm preparing for these, I'm like, oh, there could be a couple long sunny days. I should take this Beanie hat just in case. And it weighs next to nothing. But the bottom line is, it's one of those things where it's buried in my pack. I'm not going to get it out. And even though you probably should put it on, you won't put it on. And now that I've, gone 2 or 3 hunts and not taken it out of my bag, I will probably stop putting it in my bag. Okay, moving on. The Zeiss Victory Harpia 95 millimeter. This performed flawlessly as far as a piece of optics go. What did happen is that there's a small dial on the side of the Harpia that when you loosen allows the objective and the eyepiece to spin so that you can look through it on an angle. I don't know if you've ever seen people do that, where they spin the spotting scope 90 degrees and instead, because it's an angled spotting scope, so instead of looking from the top down, you're looking through the side. Depending on the angle of the tripod and where you're sitting, sometimes that can be more comfortable, especially if you're looking out the window of a vehicle because you kind of can't get your head up and above. Well, that button is broken twice on me now. And it's basically, I'm pretty rough on gear, but it broke again on this hunt. So I'm going to have to ship it back in for warranty repair again. So I'm getting to the point now where I probably wouldn't recommend the Zeiss Victory Harpia. I don't know how people feel about the Swaro. I don't know if it's got a similar weakness or flaw in the design. It's certainly, I love the glass. I love the way the rest of the scope behaves. So it's also one of those things where, if you're not like really beating the shit out of your gear, it probably doesn't matter, because it's not one of those things. It's not like a mechanical issue that breaks from overuse. It's like a physical issue, because it's strapped to my backpack and I'm beating the shit out of myself going through brush. And this thing probably took some physical impacts that, by blunt force trauma broke this thing. But I think it's just also a weakness of the design. It could be a clip. It could be, there's lots of other ways. You don't need this like protruding soft plastic dial in order to facilitate this particular feature. I'm sure there's another way that you could do it. Swaro NL Pure 12x42s. I mean, these binos are so good. There was times even where, like, I do the vast majority of my glassing with the spotting scope up there simply because everything's so far away. But sometimes I'd be glassing with my spotting scope for like half an hour, 45 minutes. And then I'd go take a leak or grab something out of the backpack and something would grab my eye. And instead of going back to the tripod, I would just lift my binos real quick and I'd be like, holy shit, man. It's almost as clear looking through these binos, even though that thing is, 3-4 kilometers away. And I think part of the way that your brain processes optical imagery, the difference in data collected from your left eye to your right eye helps complete the picture. That's why depth perception having two eyes is so important, because by comparing the discrepancy in the two images, your brain is able to tell how far away things are. And I've found for clarity and depth, looking through binoculars is far superior to a spotting scope. Now, obviously, you can't compare a 70x 95 millimeter lens with a 12 power 42 millimeter lens. Like, you're just never going to get the same level of detail. But when you're looking at the side of the mountain, the binoculars appear so much more crisp. There's more depth to things. There's more richness and vibrance. And it's because you're using both of your eyes as opposed to just one. I love these binoculars. I think if budget is not an issue, the 12x42 NL Pure is the bino that everyone should buy. Unless you don't do much Western hunting and it's only rarely, then I would think the 8s or the 10s would be the ones for you. But because of their increased field of view, you can get away with a similar handshake to a pair of 10 power. To clarify on that, the smaller the field of view and the higher magnification, the more exaggerated the effect of your handshake is. Like when you hold them, your hands shake. There's nothing you can do about that, which shakes the picture in your image. At higher powers of magnification with lower fields of view, that shaking becomes more exaggerated. But because the NL Pures, through some optical wizardry, the 12 powers have the same field of view as like a 10 power Zeiss or a 10 power Swaro EL. The perceived impact of the handshaking is reduced because you're looking out over a wider picture. That's why I went the 12 power over the 10 power, and I think it's really great. I used the marsupial bino case. This was maybe the second or third hunt I've taken it on. Really like that bino case. I'm still a little bit, the jury is still out for me because I was using an Alaska Guide Creations one previously. And I like the extra pockets on the Alaskan Guide Creations. I like that the rangefinder is right up front and it doesn't need an extra pouch. I like that there's a pocket underneath and 2 zip-up pockets to the side. I like carrying shit in my bino pouch. I like that there's a little elastic part on the top that I can slide my phone or elk calls in. So I'm going to say, for functionality, I prefer the Alaska Guide Creations, but for like a more sleek, minimalist bino case that still performs exceptionally well, the marsupial is the choice. I brought a Leupold Rx 1200, I think, 1200 or 1400 Tbr Rangefinder, and I had a bit of a mishap with the rangefinder. TBR stands for True Ballistic Range. And if you put in the load, the bullet that you're using, it will calculate either an MOA or millirad what adjustments you need to make to your scope to compensate for the angle that you're shooting at. And I thought it was because I have custom turrets on my new gun, I was pretty sure that it would also give you, it's called a horizontal distance readout. I'm not going to get into the math, but when you are shooting on an angle, the distance you need to compensate for the flight of the bullet is less than the actual line of sight distance because of the way gravity acts on objects in motion. So if you're shooting something 700 yards away, but it's at a 15-degree angle, you don't compensate for a 700-yard shot. You probably compensate for something like a 650-yard shot. And so you either need a rangefinder that does scope calibrations and gives you a horizontal distance readout, or you need an angle dope chart somewhere on your person so that you can calculate that. Or you can feed the ballistics information into your rangefinder and it will tell you specifically in millirad or MOA. Now the workaround of that is I do have the load information for that rangefinder and that gun, so it would give me an MOA readout. Now I don't have MOA on my turrets because I have distance marked on my turrets because they're custom. So typically I should just have to dial in horizontal distance and call it a day. But each click on my turret is 1/4 MOA. So if I had been in the situation, what I could have done is ranged it. It would have told me, 1.5 MOA adjustment, and I could have clicked through 6 times in order to get that distance. I was also texting with a gun nut buddy of mine, and should I have been in the situation, I was ready to text him with the distance and the angle, and he would have told me the horizontal distance compensated. It's the difference between slope distance and horizontal distance for people who are interested in you. Slope distance is the actual line of sight, like the physical distance from one thing to another. Horizontal distance is the distance compensated for angle. Okay, I brought an Outdoorsman's compact medium tripod with the extension and the Outdoorsman's pan head. And I think this might be the last time I take this tripod. And it's because I forget the exact same thing happens every time. Now, I love this tripod pan head combo. It comes in incredibly lightweight. It's very small. You can fit it in your backpack. And for sitting and glassing, it's fantastic. But it's not very tall. It's nowhere near tall enough. Basically, if you put it up to full extension on all 3 legs and then full extension of the extension post, you can get up on one knee and look through it. But you can't, it doesn't even come anywhere close enough to standing. And I always say to myself when I'm going on a backcountry hunt, oh, it's fine. I don't mind. I don't have to stand. I'll find a way to sit. You forget about vegetation. You forget that sometimes you find these great glassing areas, but there's chest-high huckleberry all around, and there's no areas. And by the time you sit down, you're never going to see out of that with your spotting scope, and that you need a spotting scope that can get up above that stuff. Or if you can't get on the perfect little rocky outcropping where you're looking out above everything, lots of times the angle of what you're wanting to look at is looking through some type of vegetation or the tops of the trees that are growing up beneath you or whatever the case may be. And I finally remembered that that's why I keep wanting to take a taller tripod. So I have a couple tripods that companies have sent me for review, and I'm going to make sure to take one of those next time. So I have more versatility in my glassing options. For my gun, I took a Fierce CT Rival 300 PRC with a Leupold VX5 HD. And I have absolutely nothing to report other than the fact that it was nice carrying around a lighter gun. I never fired it once. I think for a sheep gun, here's my only critique. It's a pretty long gun. I think it's got a 24-inch barrel on it. And when it's strapped to the backpack, one of the things I don't like about the EXO is that their rifle sling only allows the butt of the rifle to go as far down as the bottom of the backpack. And I've noticed other more sophisticated carrying systems, and the drawback of that is the barrel then sticks up significantly higher, like 16 to 20 inches above the top of the backpack. So as you're walking through stuff, the barrel is constantly getting caught on branches. And when you try and duck under stuff, you get halfway through and then you're yanked back because the barrel gets caught in the crook of branches or something like that. And that's more of a comment on the rifle sling than it is on the rifle itself. But I do think for a mountain rifle, I might want to look at something a little bit shorter. And I know there's I also don't need such a powerful round for a sheep gun. I bought this because it had to do, I needed a second gun for an elk hunt with my father and brother. And I needed a gun that could do both. So I'd rather be overpowered than underpowered. But that being said, something like a 7 SAUM or a 280 Ackley improved, I think would make a better round for a sheep gun because I could get away with a shorter barrel, and it would still be incredibly light. Anyways, that's what I'm thinking moving forward. And I brought the Spartan Javelin Pro Hunt bipod. Really like it. Don't have anything to report. Didn't get a chance to use it. I was packing Hornady Precision Hunter 212 grain ELDX bullets, and I brought 10. Did a bunch of thinking, and I just thought that was the best number to bring. Now, for video equipment, I brought a Sony Alpha 1 with a Deity mic. I used the cotton carrier to strap it to my shoulder. I had a 24-70 f2.8 Sony G Master 2 lens, a 14mm f1.4 G Master lens, 2 GoPro Hero 9s, a couple of different attachment methods, a head strap, a trekking pole mount, and a Gorilla Pod. And I brought 3 Sony batteries and 3 GoPro batteries. And in addition to that, I had a 10,000 milliamp hour battery pack, a 20,000 milliamp hour battery pack, and an Anker 21 watt solar charger. All the camera gear worked flawlessly. I have no complaints about anything. I'm going to do I already recorded a short video on what my power system is for the backcountry. So I'll get into more detail on that. I highly recommend most of the stuff that I use for batteries and powers. I'm very happy with. I brought a chopped up Thermarest Z-Lite to sit on. Highly recommend that. It worked out perfectly. I'm not going to get into my possibles pouch because I've done a whole video on that before. I actually had 2 knives with me. Bruce Culberson made me a knife, and then Tanner from Frontiersman. It was kind of funny because I had no knives a month ago, and then out of nowhere, both guys reached out and wanted to hook me up with knives. And so I kind of ended up saying somehow yes at the same time without knowing I was saying yes to 2 knives. So ended up with 2 knives, but didn't get a chance to use either, which is unfortunate. Water purification, I used a SteriPen. I have the Adventurer Opti, and I've had battery issues with that from the get-go, which I thought I had figured out. But even on this hunt, I had thought I had 2 fresh batteries, and I went to use them, and they didn't work. So I'm going to switch over to the USB-powered SteriPen, because then at least you can always recharge it. But I love the SteriPen for its functionality. It's the only thing I've used for the last 5 years, and it works great, other than the battery issues. I took a DeLorme Inreach Explorer. Well, it's not a DeLorme anymore. It's a Garmin Inreach Explorer. I'm going to trade this in and get the Explorer Plus. that has the ability to load background maps like topo maps, orthos, satellite images. I'll get into why later, but I want a backup for my phone, which is a bit of foreshadowing on what happened on this hunt. Brought a GSI Microlite 500 milliliter coffee mug. This is my luxury item. I love being able to make coffee and just sip on it throughout the day and have it in my backpack and not worrying about it spilling. And this is an incredibly lightweight option that facilitates that. So I really like it. For cooking, I bought a Jetboil Minimo. Unless I'm going on a hardcore winter hunt and I use the MSR reactor, sorry, I think the Minimo is the perfect cooking device for most situations. And I only went through a single 100-gram fuel canister the entire hunt. And that was making a cup of coffee 2 to 3 times a day and boiling water for food at night. Sea Summit titanium long spoon, couple Bic lighters, a 6-liter drum light from MSR, which is like a little water bladder. And I also carried a 3-liter bladder in my backpack, which I didn't use very much this hunt because water was not an issue. So I was just filling it up in my Nalgene as I needed it. That bladder that I used from Hydroforce is called, from Hydra Pack is called the Force 3-liter. And I like it because it's much beefier than most other bags. Okay, Black Diamond Revolt 350 headlamp. It's good enough. I'm not that impressed with it anymore. I'd like to start, maybe one of the next big reviews I'll do is like a bunch of headlamps or something, because I'm just not that impressed with. It's okay, but the batteries don't last super long and you got to recharge it every couple days, and the strap gets really floppy, and it works, but it's not great. Okay, that's everything other than my food. I'm not going to go in depth on the food because I've done multiple food related videos, but here's what a single day looked like. Peak Refuel Mountain Berry Granola Breakfast, 4 Starbucks Via packets, some trail mix, a green belly meal for lunch, macadamia nuts, whey isolate that I put in my granola in the morning. I had a protein bar. I'd bring a little bit of macadamia oil preloaded in my field stripped Peak Refuel dinners. I had a chunk of sausage every day, and then a couple other little treats in there. Like I had some gummies. I had a couple Werthers and a couple of Jolly Ranchers just to kind of add some variety. But I basically ate the same thing every day. All right, folks, there you have it. That was an hour, and there's literally like 40 questions on Instagram that I do want to talk about, like the things I didn't bring and I wished I'd have brought, and the things that I brought and I didn't need to bring, and what the most useful thing. There's a lot of really good questions in there, and I want to take my time and answer them thoroughly, and I just don't have any more time today, so we're going to cut this short. I will either answer those questions on Instagram, or I will do a separate follow-up podcast where I just strictly answer all those questions. As always, if you could take some time, like, comment, share, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. If you want to support the podcast directly, mindfulhunter.com/shop. Go buy a t-shirt or a hat. That would be great. And again, if you're interested in the 6-month transformation project, j@mindfulhunter.com, $1,500 for the 6 months. Let's kick some ass. If you've already sent me an email, I'll get back to you shortly. And as always, thanks for tuning in.